So I got my weekly assignment for African politics, week 7, done about an hour earlier. At least I submitted it about an hour earlier than I usually do. The paragraph on the bottom is my answer to the third question, and the second question, and then those two paragraphs are my answer to the first question. Most recently, I was able to successfully get the Kitteru voice back by downloading what I was later told was an Android emulator called BlueStacks. This is a trail mix. With raisins, nuts. I think they're technically called legumes. And M&Ms. Maybe some chocolate chips too. Dad pretty much just made a pizza. I woke up around, I believe around 7:30 in the morning. From which I started work on that week 7 African politics assignment. I submitted it at 4 p.m. Had sent it at 5 p.m. It lasted for roughly 45 minutes. I believe we confirmed a new senator during that meeting. Dad got home, I would say, shortly before the Senate meeting started. Maybe about 20 minutes before the Senate meeting started. And so I ended up eating Singapore, 2 plastic bowls of it. One at a time, with the second one coming in the middle of the Senate meeting. Run through Zoom. Though I can only really afford to do a little work on the 99th Dan Hamming right now, as I'm going to take the midterm for my national security class at 11 p.m. today, which is pretty much the latest I can take it. As I'll have 50 minutes for it. It will mostly consist of true-false questions, and multiple choice questions. I have 5 short answer questions that only really require responses that are 3 to 4 sentences. I made some changes around here to try to make it more efficient. There's plenty of good music available on YouTube, although listening to music makes me unable to hear when Dad comes in to the room. At times. Sometime between where I had the last Singapore and now, that's when Dad first gave me a serving in the form of this bowl of that mountain trail mix, as I believe it's called. I know it's trail mix, but I'm not sure if the bag for it says mountain trail mix or something else. I'm doing pretty well on the tournament. Here's where I'm at on the fairies tree research. Today, at 12:20 p.m., we had our national security class, of which today was a strategy lab. In which we were supposed to come up with a strategy for the use of nuclear weapons by the Biden administration of the United States. I was the sync for Group 3, which essentially meant I was responsible for discussions between Group 3 members, and I was responsible for reporting the general group consensus. The group ended up agreeing with the suggestions I came up with, which was that we only use nuclear weapons if nuclear weapons are used against us or an ally. At the time, I said that I believe that if conventional military force is used against the United States, or if there's a conventional target the United States needs to eliminate, that the United States military would be able to use conventional military force to achieve the necessary objectives. Then I suggested a counterforce strategy regarding the use of nuclear weapons, which is when nuclear weapons are used in order to take out the nuclear weapons of an enemy state. Now, the good thing with that kind of strategy is that it's more ethical in that it has, it saves a lot of lives compared to a counter value strategy in which you target cities. Excuse me. But it can also give state your other nuclear powers a use it or lose it mentality. Thus making them more trigger happy in regards to launching nuclear weapons. To try and counteract that, because I know that the kind of strategy I came up with would require a secure second strike capacity. I said that some of the considerable military budget, if it really can't be, well, it didn't really say anything about cutting the military budget and using it to fund social programs, but I would think that's a pretty good idea. I said that some of the military budget could be redistributed to focus on developing hypersonic missiles. I don't believe the United States currently has those, but I wasn't even sure if you could fit nuclear warheads on hypersonic missiles. They might be too small. I came up with the idea as a way to resolve the use it or lose it mentality issue, in that counterforce strategies tend to make crises worse, in that sort of way. I'm getting extra Sky Essence due to the feeding bonus, which will last for pretty much the entire event here. Although today's daily exclusive isn't a unique building, so I'm not interested in it. in that these hypersonic missiles would go faster and thus could potentially bypass the issue of whoever you're targeting getting an early warning. I said that it would be, in terms of the FAS plan or the feasibility, acceptability, suitability plan, I said that it would be feasible because, if I'm trying to remember correctly here, the United States has a considerable nuclear stockpile and a considerable military budget. Part of what made me come up with the hypersonic missiles thought was, at one point, one of my group members told me that most of the United States nuclear stockpile is aging. So I came up with the hypersonic missile thought as a way to sort of modernize it. I was sort of thinking that newer nuclear weapons would be better able to penetrate a country. In this case, it means getting past their ballistic missile defense systems, or be more likely to survive a first strike, which is something I would need for the strategy I came up with. It's suitable because I believe I said that the United States has a considerable conventional military force, so it can afford to use conventional military force in response to conventional military force attacks, so that its nuclear weapon arsenal can only be used in response to nuclear weapon use, which this should probably be the threshold. A pretty high threshold considering how much destruction nuclear weapons do. That way, it's also acceptable because that way you deter the use of nuclear weapons. And thus, ultimately, we hopefully won't ever have to be concerned with the use of nuclear weapons. That's probably the whole point of nuclear weapons. You're not ever supposed to use them. Or at least that should probably be the viewpoint to take. Man, I said that it was acceptable because the counterforce plan results in reduced casualties, and that if you stick to, I've said that if you stick to a counterforce strategy, then other nuclear powers may be more likely to use a counterforce strategy, thus saving a lot of lives during a nuclear war. And in response to mentioning hypersonic missiles, I was told that by the professor that these missiles, as I was presenting, following the end of discussions at roughly 12:50 p.m., of which I stayed into the spare room until roughly noon, during which I moved to here specifically because I figured there would be a chance that I would be made the sink. And it turns out I was this time around. There were a total of 4 groups. It was a bit, what's the right word? Onerous, using getting the voice forge app through the BlueStacks emulator, BlueStacks 4. I'm actually updating this building so that I can complete this task and thus complete my 24th task set. It's important that you complete these task sets as quickly as possible in order to have the best chance of getting fully evolving your evolvable building during an event like this. And plus, this new and improved Valorian Guard building, it'll not only will it produce more Valorian Guards, but it'll have considerably more benefit. Here's what the notes for my midterm for my national security class looks like. And here's the rest of the pizza that Dad made and saved for me. It looks pretty good. I'll try to do some more work on the notes in the remaining time before 11 p.m. when I start taking the midterm, for which I'll have 50 minutes to complete. I believe, if I remember correctly from what the professor told me at the end of class when I asked, 10 true-false questions, 20 multiple-choice questions, and 5 short-answer questions. The short answer were 4 points, the multiple-choice 3, and the true-false 2. Here's a quest for the dwarven statue, for which it has a production period of 2 days, which is the very highest of all the copper foundry productions, so I've still got about a day to go, so I'm about halfway there. I'm currently producing the bags of groceries, and I also need to do that for the dataset I'm currently on. I use time boosters, specifically 2 1-hour time boosters, so that I could hurry up the finishing crafting of the Valorian Valor building, the new one, the new updated one, and ultimately not have it finished crafting while I was taking the exam. I mean, the midterm.